I had always been diligent in my work, earning a modest level of success, and living a harmonious and happy life with my wife. My wife, a graceful and intellectual university lecturer, made us the ideal couple that everyone admired. One day, by pure chance, I discovered my wife was having an affair. Driven by a sense of humiliation and curiosity, I began investigating secretly. Once I had gathered all the sordid details, I started exacting revenge on them both, targeting their bodies and their finances. My wife's lover's spouse, my secretary, Miss Song, also got dragged into the situation and eventually became my mistress. The four of us then became embroiled in a tangled web of extramarital affairs, leading to one melodramatic event after another. In the end, I managed to ensure that both my wife and her lover lost everything, both in terms of love and wealth, but I, too, found myself descending into a moral abyss. "I'm still working late. I have to hang up now," my wife hurriedly said on the phone, her voice betraying a trace of nervousness. Before I could say anything more, she had already hung up. I wasn't calling her without reason. Earlier that evening, when I returned home from work, I had discovered that 2 condoms were missing from a freshly opened box. I clearly remembered buying that box just this Monday, and we hadn't even used it yet. It was now past 9 in the evening, and my instincts as a man were telling me that my wife might have done something behind my back. However, a sliver of rationality kept my anger at bay for the time being. My wife, a university lecturer, was always gentle and considerate, never once betraying me. Although she was over 30, she had maintained a very good figure, likely due to not having had children. I was now torn between trusting her character and the obscene images that began flashing through my mind. I wanted to confront her and find out what she was really doing out so late. Just as I picked up the phone to call her again and demand answers, doubt crept into my mind. Would she tell me the truth even if I asked? With no concrete evidence to go on, I decided to stay calm and not raise any suspicions. Instead, I would observe her behavior when she got home. Pacing around the living room, every minute seemed to crawl by. To calm myself down, I decided to take a shower. Cold water splashed against my skin, and as I cooled down, I began analyzing my wife's recent behavior, trying to find any signs that might point to an affair. Thinking back, I realized she had been working late quite often recently. She had also started dressing more provocatively, and this morning she had even worn stockings she hadn't worn in ages. Before she left the house today, she had smugly asked, "Do I look sexy in this?" At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, assuming she was just admiring herself. I had even jokingly replied, "Sexy, too sexy. Are you planning on seducing another man?" "Stop it," she had laughed as she walked out the door. Now, recalling those moments, the more I thought about it, the more something felt wrong. Just as I was carefully piecing everything together, the sound of the front door closing jolted me out of my thoughts. I quickly put on my clothes and stepped out of the bathroom to see my wife sitting on the sofa, casually scrolling through her phone. "You're back. Why did you work so late?" I asked calmly. "End of the semester. There's just too much going on at school," she replied. "I see. How about I pick you up tomorrow?" "You've been working so hard lately," I offered. At my suggestion, a flicker of panic crossed her eyes, but she quickly composed herself and smiled. "Thanks for caring, but I don't want to trouble you after you've worked all day. I can manage." Her response only deepened my suspicion. Despite this, I didn't press the issue further and instead said softly, "All right then, go wash up. You must be tired." Obediently, she put down her phone and headed toward the bathroom. Staring at her phone left on the coffee table, I felt an overwhelming urge to check it for any hidden secrets. But just as I reached out to grab it, my wife quickly came out of the bathroom, slightly flustered. She walked straight over, picked up the phone, and muttered, "Where's that makeup I ordered? Let me check the delivery status." Feigning interest, she swiped her phone a few times and then casually slipped it into her pocket. "Wait a minute," I said, frowning. "Didn't you leave this morning wearing stockings? What happened to them?" Well, I accidentally ripped them, so I took them off and threw them away," she said, her voice hesitant. Her explanation didn't sit right with me. I bit back the crude words that nearly escaped my mouth. Ripped them? Or had someone else torn them off? Anger surged inside me. Lying in bed that night, my thoughts kept swirling around the possibility of my wife's infidelity. I tried to convince myself otherwise, but her recent behavior seemed to tell a different story. Was it something I had done wrong? Or was she simply seeking excitement elsewhere? The questions looped endlessly in my mind. What are you thinking about? My wife's voice broke through my thoughts. Oh, nothing, I replied quickly. After her shower, she smelled faintly of perfume. I cuddled up next to her, trying to initiate intimacy, but she brushed me off, saying, I'm too tired today. Let's do it another time. Her rejection instantly killed my mood. Though I continued to hold her from behind, my heart was now a turbulent mess. That night, I tossed and turned, my thoughts drifting further and further from me. Lingxin, breakfast is ready, I called out the next morning. I'm up, I'm putting on makeup, she responded from the bedroom. As I sat at the table eating my breakfast, my mind kept replaying her recent actions, and a sense of unease began creeping into my heart. In our 7 years of marriage, though I hadn't made her rich, I had always taken good care of her. To outsiders, we were the perfect couple, her a university professor, me a small business owner. We seemed harmonious in every way. If I told anyone that she was having an affair, no one would believe me. Hell, even I wasn't fully convinced. As I slowly sipped my porridge, I glanced up and saw Lingxin emerging from the bedroom. She was dressed in a black, tight-fitting skirt with a sheer lace blouse. The outfit accentuated her curves perfectly. Seeing her like this, my rage should have erupted, but instead, I found myself letting out a quiet, bitter laugh. A strange sense of curiosity and thrill stirred within me. I wanted to watch what she would do next. Lately, you've been so busy with schoolwork. Is there anything I can help with? I asked. What could you possibly help with? Just focus on your own work, she replied curtly. True, but take care of yourself, I added. Will do, she said, then hastily put down her utensils. I'm running late, I need to get going. I'll drive you, I offered. No need. You take care of your own work, she brushed me off again, clearly avoiding any more conversation. I sat at the breakfast table, watching her intently. Realizing she might have upset me, Lingxin turned back, kissed me on the cheek, and said, Love you, hubby. It felt like an empty ritual as she hurried out the door to go to work. I stood on the balcony, lighting a cigarette, watching her drive away. I knew what I had to do today. Taking out my phone, I dialed my business partner. Hey, Leo, something came up, so I won't be coming into the office today. Can you take care of things for me? Sure, no problem, Leo replied enthusiastically. I stubbed out my cigarette, left the dishes on the table, and rushed out the door. To avoid drawing attention, I left my car at home and took a cab to my wife's workplace. Her office was conveniently located on a street lined with restaurants and inns. After scanning the area, my eyes landed on a small hotel named Qingqing Inn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I counted. The hotel had 5 floors, and the 4th floor faced directly across from her office. I'd like a room, preferably on the 4th floor, facing the street, I requested at the front desk. Just you? The receptionist asked. Yes, just me. Do you have any rooms available? I asked again. Sorry, we only have one room left on the 4th floor, but it's been reserved long-term. Would a room on the 5th floor work for you? She offered. The 5th floor? That's fine. I'll take it, I agreed. The receptionist quickly processed my reservation and handed me the keycard. By the way, she added, don't forget to check in if someone else arrives later. There's no one else, just me, I said, quickly grabbing my room key and rushing upstairs. Once inside the room, I went straight to the window and sat at the desk, observing my wife's actions through the hotel's surveillance. She sat elegantly on a chair, her figure perfectly outlined by the pencil skirt she was wearing. I couldn't help but think how beautiful she still looked, even in her 30s. A smile of satisfaction crept across my face. I watched her every move, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Except for the class she attended from 10 to 11 a.m., the rest of her day was spent diligently working in her office. In the afternoon, she had no classes and stayed in the office, occasionally standing up to stretch or go to the restroom. From time to time, male colleagues would come by for short chats, but nothing more than a few minutes of casual conversation. The entire day, she spent most of her time at her desk, focused on her work, barely even looking at her phone. I started to question my own judgment and regretted the suspicion I had cast on her. As I realized my wife wasn't cheating, a strange sense of disappointment crept over me. But why? Was I hoping to catch her in the act? I found myself questioning my own thoughts. By the time the clock struck 7 p.m., my wife was still at her desk, the only one left in the office. I started feeling guilty for my baseless suspicions. Just as I was about to head downstairs to surprise her and make up for my doubts by taking her out for a nice meal, my phone rang. It was her. "Hey, honey, are you off work? What would you like to eat?" I asked warmly, trying to sound affectionate. "No, I have to work late again tonight." "You should eat without me," she replied. Her words left me bewildered. Wasn't she just leaving work? How could she be working late? Something felt off, but I didn't let my voice betray my concern. "Okay, then. I'll eat first," I said calmly. The call ended and I watched as she walked onto the street. A middle-aged man, around my age, approached her and they exchanged smiles and words while keeping a noticeable distance between them. At that moment, a storm of emotions raged within me: anger, humiliation, and confusion. I grabbed my phone and rushed downstairs to see where they were heading. As I reached the 3rd floor, I saw my wife walking alone into the stairwell leading to the 4th floor. Wait a minute, there aren't any rooms on the 4th floor, right? I thought to myself. Could it be that the room that's always booked is hers? But why was she heading up alone? What about the man she met? I quickly made my way downstairs, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. As I reached the lobby, the middle-aged man entered through the front door. Before he could pass the reception, the staff called out to him. "Sir, new guests need to register. Which room are you staying in?" "Me, I already checked in this morning. I just went out to grab some food," he replied nervously. "All right, you can go in," the receptionist said without even glancing up. The man hurried upstairs, and at that moment, I was convinced my wife was having an affair, and she had been hiding it from me. I sat down in the lobby, lost in thought. When I was sure both of them had gone into the room, I went up to the 4th floor and stood outside their door, trying to catch any sound. But the more I strained to hear, the more silence filled my ears. I was torn between the urge to kick the door down and confront them and the fear of what I might find. Thoughts of exposing my wife's infidelity and ruining her reputation swirled in my mind. Just as I prepared to barge in, a strange thought stopped me. I wasn't sure why, but something in my mind held me back. Whether it was out of spite or some twisted sense of satisfaction, I couldn't say. But that hesitation ultimately saved me from crossing a line I couldn't return from. I stayed in the hotel lobby for a while longer, calming my emotions. It was nearly 9 p.m. by the time I left the hotel and caught a cab home. As soon as I arrived, I heard the familiar sound of my wife's high heels clicking up the stairs. Taking a deep breath, I composed myself, pretending to be casually lying on the sofa, playing on my phone. When she opened the door, her face was glowing, but there wasn't a hint of guilt in her expression. "You're back. Have you eaten?" I asked her. "Yeah, I ordered takeout," she replied, kicking off her heels and heading to the bedroom. Looking at the unwashed breakfast dishes still on the table, she sounded surprised. "You didn't eat dinner at home? Why are these still here?" Feeling a bit flustered, I stammered, "Oh, I had to rush out for work this morning, and I ate dinner with Leo. I just got home a little while ago." "You came back right after me," I added, trying to explain. "You just got home? I thought your company's been slow lately. You're not hiding anything from me, are you? She teased with a playful smile. What? No way. I wouldn't dare. I laughed along nervously. Good. I'm going to shower, she said, heading to the bathroom. Though I smiled on the outside, my mind was racing. This woman not only acted nonchalantly, but she even had the audacity to joke about my faithfulness. Watching her walk away, I fell deep into thought. Later, as we lay in bed with our backs to each other, she asked softly, "Have you been preoccupied with something lately? You've seemed a little off." "No, nothing's wrong. What about you?" I asked, turning the question back on her. "Me, just a bit tired from work." "Well, as long as everything's okay," I muttered. We both fell silent after that. The air between us felt heavy, as if something unsaid hung in the room. "After all these years, do you feel happy in our marriage?" I whispered. It's fine, I guess. It's just what? It's nothing. Good night." Her hesitation left me feeling uneasy. I knew she had more to say, but I couldn't push her to reveal it. That night, I found it hard to sleep, though I wasn't as restless as before. Instead, I began thinking carefully about what I should do next. The following morning, my wife dressed up as usual. Before she left, I told her I had a work dinner and would be home late. She simply replied, "Don't drink too much." I knew she'd meet the man after work, so I went to the office as usual during the day. Sitting at my desk, I lit a cigarette and kept going over the reasons why my wife might have cheated. I couldn't find any. After all these years of marriage, while we had grown a bit tired of each other, I had never wronged her, and our relationship had been relatively stable. Was it because we didn't have kids? Did she stop loving me? Who was that man? My mind was racing with questions, and I needed answers. "Mr. Jung, here's the report from yesterday. Leo asked me to give it to you since you didn't come in," my secretary, Song, called out, snapping me out of my thoughts. "All right, just leave it there," I said quietly. "Mr. Jung, you don't look well. Are you feeling okay?" "Yeah, I've just been really busy lately. A lot of social events." "I'll make you some tea," she said, walking off before I could respond. Song was a few years younger than me, and for a moment, her figure reminded me of my wife. She brought me the tea and left, closing the door behind her. "If you need anything, just call," she said with a smile. "Thanks. I will." I stared at the report on my desk, but I couldn't bring myself to open it. I had no energy for work. I spent the day standing up, sitting down, and pacing the office restlessly. My phone in hand, I scrolled aimlessly, just waiting for time to pass. Finally, at 6 p.m., I left the office, and as I walked out, I saw that everyone had gone home except Song, who was still organizing today's reports. "Not going home yet, Song?" I asked. "Almost done, Mr. Jung," she replied. "Make sure you lock up and turn off the power when you leave," I reminded her. "I will," she said. I got into my car and drove out of the garage, dialing my wife's number. "Hey, are you working late again tonight?" I asked. "Yes, I've still got a lot to do. Aren't you going to your dinner?" "Right, I'm on my way now. Talk to you later." "Okay, bye." I hung up the phone and drove into the night. At that moment, I was determined to follow the man that night and figure out who he really was. As I turned the corner from the parking garage, I saw Xiao Song standing by the roadside, waiting for a taxi. She had just gotten off work. Since it was still early, I thought, why not give her a lift? I pulled my car over to the side of the road. "Waiting for a taxi, Xiao Song? Oh, it's you, Mr. Jung?" "Yes, I'm trying to get one. This is the evening rush hour. It'll be hard to find a cab. Hop in. I'll give you a ride." "Are you sure, Mr. Jung? Would that be convenient for you?" "Of course, no problem. I'm not in a hurry." After she got in, Xiao Song told me her address. I noticed it was in the same direction as my wife's workplace, so I started driving that way. I hadn't paid much attention to Xiao Song before, but today, as I glanced over at her sitting in the passenger seat, I realized that her figure and looks were on par with my wife's, though she had a touch of youthful energy. Xiao Song, are you married? Yes, I got married just last year. What does your husband do? He's a few years older than me. He's a manager at a sales company. I've heard your wife is a university lecturer, Mr. Zhang. You two must be very happy together, she said with a bright smile. Well, we're okay, I guess, I responded. We chatted casually, and before long, we arrived at her place. Just drop me off by the street, Mr. Zhang. I live on the 3rd floor. I can take the stairs from here. All right then, I'll stop here. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. See you. See you. After dropping Xiao Song off, I headed to my wife's workplace. I grabbed a quick bite to eat nearby, then parked my car in a back alley to avoid being noticed. It was still not yet 8 o'clock, so I found a seat in a cafe next to the hotel where I had seen them before and waited anxiously for my wife and that man to come out. This time, the waiting wasn't as agonizing as last time. I knew what I had to do, and I was even excited about what was to come. About half an hour later, the familiar figures of my wife and that man emerged from the hotel. I hid behind the cafe's glass window, watching them quietly. They stood by the roadside, talking about something. As they spoke, the man slapped my wife's butt, teasing her repeatedly. Anger surged within me, but I managed to suppress my urge to rush over and punch him. After a few minutes, my wife got into her car and drove off. The man, on the other hand, got into a black sedan parked nearby, lighting a cigarette. I quickly pulled my car out of the alley and parked behind his. Just then, I noticed that Xiao Song had left her hairpin on my passenger seat, but I couldn't worry about that now. Finding out who this man was took priority. A few minutes later, the black sedan started moving, and I followed him. This was my first time tailing someone, my wife's lover, no less, and it filled me with both nervousness and excitement. After about 20 minutes, he parked his car in a street spot. I got out of my car and suddenly realized the place looked very familiar. The building next to us, wasn't this Xiao Song's apartment? I had dropped her off here after work. As I stood there, marveling at the coincidence, I watched as the man walked up Xiao Song's stairs. I observed from across the street as he climbed floor by floor. 1, 2, 3. He finally entered a 3rd-floor apartment. I vaguely remembered that Xiao Song had mentioned she lived on the 3rd floor earlier today. My mind was racing. Hurriedly, I got back into my car. My wife's lover is my secretary's husband? How did they even meet? On the way home, I drove while trying to wrap my head around it. I was relieved to have discovered who my wife was cheating with, but now I was curious about how they got involved in the first place. My thoughts were all over the place as I continued driving. At a red light, I glanced at the passenger seat, where Xiao Song's hairpin still lay, lost in thought. Remembering how hard-working Xiao Song was, I felt sorry for her, unaware of her husband's betrayal. At the same time, I was deeply frustrated with my wife's unfaithfulness. Beep, beep, beep. The blaring honks from the cars behind me snapped me out of my daze. I noticed the light had turned green long ago. I pressed on the gas and drove toward home. Just then, my phone rang. Hello, honey? Are you still out? Don't drink too much if you're at a business dinner. I'm on my way home now. I've already eaten. Almost there. Okay, be safe. After hanging up, a wave of shame washed over me. I couldn't bear to be the fool any longer. I wanted revenge. I wanted them to pay for what they had done. 20 minutes later, I arrived home. When I opened the door, my wife was already washed up, lounging on the couch in her usual lace nightgown, playing on her phone. You're back. Did you drink tonight? She asked with a smile. No, it was just a quick dinner. No one drank. Well, go shower. You must be tired. Sure, I replied briefly as I headed to the bathroom. Come here, give me a kiss, she called out just as I reached the bathroom door. "What's this about? You're feeling affectionate all of a sudden?" I asked, surprised. "I just want a kiss, that's all. Come here." Forcing a smile, I walked over and reluctantly leaned in. The moment her lips touched my face, all I felt was disgust and humiliation, not happiness. My anger burned even hotter inside me. I turned and walked toward the bathroom, my face expressionless. All I could think about was her betrayal. I had to make them pay for this. As cold water cascaded over me in the shower, I thought, how should I get back at them? Why did my wife hook up with Xiao Song's husband? Then it hit me, Xiao Song. She was the perfect person for revenge. A wicked plan began to form in my mind. Once my wife was sound asleep, I quietly unlocked her phone. Her top pinned contact was a man named Wang Gang. I eagerly clicked on it, and what I saw filled me with rage. "Babe, you were in great shape today, wilder than usual. You weren't bad either, a real beast. By the way, your stockings from yesterday are still in my pocket. Just thinking about it excites me." Speaking of stockings, I almost got caught by my husband yesterday. We'll have to be more careful next time. What's there to be afraid of? You'll divorce him sooner or later. You need to start transferring his money to your account. Your husband has no idea his wife has been sleeping with her subordinate's husband, does he? Hurry up and sort things out with your wife. You've got to divorce her. Of course. You're the one I love. My marriage was just because she looked a bit like you. Seeing these messages between them, I glanced over at my sleeping wife and was filled with a desire to make them suffer. I saved their conversation on my phone and put her phone back in place. The next day, I arrived at work early. Seeing Xiao Song working diligently at her desk, I smiled devilishly. "Xiao Song, could you come to my office for a moment?" "Sure, Mr. Zhang." "Close the door." She came over to my desk, looking a bit puzzled. "Is there something you need, Mr. Zhang?" "Xiao Song, how's your relationship with your husband?" "We're doing fine. Why do you ask?" She responded, clearly surprised. "I'll get straight to the point. Your husband is cheating on you with my wife. They're planning to divorce us both." Her face showed disbelief. "That's impossible, Mr. Zhang. How could they even know each other? They're each other's first loves. Look, here are their chat logs. That's your husband's profile picture, right?" Xiao Song took my phone and started scrolling through their messages. As she read, she began to cry. "Wang Gang, you bastard," she sobbed and cursed, her voice growing louder. I walked over to her and comforted her, trying to avoid attention from the other employees. "We've both been played by these two. Trust me, I won't let them get away with it." Her crying softened and she looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mr. Zhang, please help me," she said softly, leaning into my arms. As I held her, I gently asked, "What do you think of me?" "What do you mean, Mr. Zhang?" "I mean, do you think we'd make a good match?" Actually, when I married Wang Gang, I was confused. Now that he's like this, I have no feelings for him anymore, Xiao Song stammered. "All right then, I have a plan. You just need to cooperate with me. I can make sure the two of them leave with nothing, and then we can be together openly," I confidently assured Xiao Song, who was nestled in my arms. Xiao Song gazed at me with tearful eyes and slowly nodded. I leaned in for a kiss. In that moment, we embraced passionately in the office. That kiss was a release of desire and revenge. After work, I took Xiao Song to a hotel across from my wife's workplace. I deliberately booked a room next to the one my wife had been using frequently. At that moment, Xiao Song and I were no longer just superior and subordinate. She was now my lover and would be my future wife. In the hotel room, we indulged in an intense, passionate embrace, releasing our inner frustrations and desires. As we lay in bed, I shared my plan with Xiao Song. By then, she had completely turned to the dark side. Leaning against me, she said, "I want to make them drink the poison they've brewed themselves." Soon after, we heard noises from the room next door. Those two scumbags had started their dirty deeds again. Fueled by this scene, Xiao Song and I continued indulging in our physical desires, neither of us wanting to be outdone. The thought of the immoral acts happening simultaneously in 2 rooms strangely excited me. Afterward, I glanced at my phone. It was already 8 p.m. Xiao Song and I hurried back home to begin executing our plan. I had barely sat down at home when my wife returned. Her face was flushed, and there were visible hickeys on her neck. I pretended not to notice. "Lingxin, come here, I want to discuss something with you," I said calmly. "What's up? What is it?" My wife's eyes were clouded with guilt, likely thinking I had caught on to something. "Here's the thing, our company has a foolproof project coming up, with an initial investment of about 3 million. In 6 months, we should see a return of over 1 million. Since this project is highly competitive, I'm planning to intercept it using your name. That way, all the profits will be yours, and we won't have to share with the company." Hearing this, my wife hesitated. "But where will we get that much money?" "We can sell the house. It should bring in around 2 million, I suggested. "And where will we live after selling the house?" "Come on, it's only for 6 months. We'll make enough to buy another house. I can't go meet the client directly. It would raise suspicion at the company. But if you go quietly, no one will know. Plus, my funds are tied up with the company." "I don't know. I need to think about it." "This is too risky," she replied, heading to the bedroom. I knew she was consulting with her lover on WeChat, but everything was going according to my plan. After about half an hour, my wife emerged from the bedroom, looking pleased. "I think we can do this project. I'll figure something out tomorrow." "Okay, get some rest," I said with a smile. Little did she know, she and her lover had already fallen into the trap I had set for them. At that moment, Xiao Song messaged me. "Mr. Zhang, Wang Gang just asked if our company is working on a $3 million project." "What did you say?" I told him exactly what you instructed and even mentioned that the project was very profitable. Reading her message, I knew my wife had bought into my lie. Soon, the 3 million would be mine. That night, I checked my wife's phone again. I just confirmed with my wife. "The project is real. Sell your house quickly. I'll lend you the rest so you can gather the 3 million and take the project. Once the project is secure, divorce him. By then, he'll have nothing, not the house, not the money." Wang Gang messaged my wife on WeChat. "I'll take care of it tomorrow." "We're finally going to be together," my wife replied. I smiled deviously. Over the next few days, my wife rushed around trying to sell the house. Within a week, she had succeeded. "Honey, I've gathered the 3 million. Let's hurry and sign that project," she excitedly told me over the phone. "But didn't the house sell for just over 2 million? Where'd you get the rest?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Don't worry about it. I borrowed the rest from a colleague," she replied. "All right, I'll come pick you up." I drove her to sign the so-called project, which was actually a failed venture I'd been stuck with. I was desperate to get rid of it. As my wife sat in the passenger seat, I noticed Xiao Song's hair clip still lying in the car. For a moment, panic flashed through my mind. But my wife, so focused on the contract and her impending divorce, didn't notice the small detail. That afternoon, my wife signed the project under her name, blissfully unaware that the 3 million was already in my pocket. A week later, one evening, my wife calmly told me, "Let's get a divorce. I have someone else." I knew this day would come, but I hadn't expected her to say it so nonchalantly. Feigning shock, I asked, "Who is it? Why would you do this?" "He's my first love." "We've been together for a while," she replied smugly. "I've already transferred my project to his name. Now, we no longer have any shared assets," she added, with a hint of pride and contempt in her voice. "Lingxin, you're ruthless. Are you sure about this?" I asked angrily. "I'm sure." "Let's finalize the divorce as soon as possible," she responded coldly. "Fine. Tomorrow, we'll go." I don't want to stay married to you for another day, I replied, slamming the bedroom door behind me, the sound reverberating through the house. That night, I couldn't sleep. Despite my excitement over the success of my plan, I felt a slight twinge of regret. After tomorrow, my connection to this woman would be severed forever. The next morning, we went to the civil affairs office and finalized the divorce. As she walked away without looking back, a mix of emotions surged within me. In the afternoon, Xiaosong came into my office, informing me that her husband had also divorced her. At that moment, I blocked all of my ex-wife's contacts. Sitting in my office chair, with Xiaosong in my arms and millions in my bank account, I was lost in deep thought.